February of this year, EDP presented its strategic plan for the period of 2021 to 2025, at a time when there were high expectations for the sector. However, when we fast forward to October, the future looks even more promising. It is clear that the world needs us to go further and faster in the energy transition. Climate change has set a hard deadline, and the recent IPCC report on climate change is very clear on this. It has sounded the alarm with a code red for humanity and reiterated the need to step up current commitments towards a new decarbonized and electrified world. We are all collectively being challenged to address the energy transition in transformative ways. But without the support of policymakers, businesses, and organizations, the transition may not happen quickly enough to stay under the 1.5 degrees goal set out in the Paris Agreement. The recent rise in gas and electricity prices in European energy markets only serves to show that the energy transition is the solution and not the problem. It is essential to speed up the bet on renewables and electrification as key factors for decarbonization. This is something we owe to future generations. We need to step up to the challenge and move towards a more sustainable future. In particular, as we come up to the COP26, we need to commit to making a change. That is why, at EDP, we are changing tomorrow now. It is clear that we are at an inflection point, and the global energy landscape needs to change more in the next 10 years than in all of the previous decades. This calls for strong fundamentals and unprecedented investment in the energy transition. According to the International Energy Agency, renewables deployment per year will have to increase by 4 times until 2030 and take a share of almost 90% of electricity generation by 2050. These targets are more ambitious than the ones we discussed at the Capital Markets Day back in February. And while growth accelerates, we will continue to see these technologies become increasingly more competitive. The levelized cost of energy is expected to decrease by 36% in solar, 18% in onshore, and 47% in offshore by 2030, just to give you a couple of numbers. This next decade, what the UN calls the Decade of Action, is decisive to accelerate this transition. Some are already calling it the electric decade. Now, the world requires us all to move forward with the energy transition, and policymakers are highly supportive of this move, although we must ensure it is done in a just and equitable manner. In the US, Biden administration has set a new target of 50% emissions reduction by 2030 versus 2005, aiming to reach full decarbonization of the electricity generation by 2035. In order to reach these objectives, the US Congress has been discussing 2 transformational legislative packages. The infrastructure bill of $1.2 trillion, which includes additional investments in electricity grids of $73 billion, which are critical for renewables growth. And an even more relevant budget reconciliation bill, up to $3.5 trillion, which reaffirms the support to low-carbon technologies, providing long-term visibility on tax incentives for clean energy development. In Europe, the Fit for 55 legislative package was issued, including reforms to the EU emissions trading scheme. It is also worth highlighting the increased guidance and financial support for the contracting of renewables PPAs by small and medium-sized companies, which is in line with our expectations of a growing PPA market in Europe. In other regions of the world, for example Asia, there is also a strong and increasing support for decarbonization. This urgency will certainly be reiterated at the COP26, where we all need to combine our strength to fight climate change globally. Now, looking at EDP, we are perfectly positioned to seize these opportunities across all of our platforms. This is why we committed to invest 24 billion euros in the energy transition. This includes 19 billion euros to deploy 20 gigawatts of renewable capacity until 2025. We have already secured more than 1/3 of these megawatts, which once again provides visibility on our end goal. We will invest more than 3 billion euros to create value in our electricity networks portfolio in Portugal, Spain, and Brazil. This is a critical enabler of the energy transition and we will maximize value through grid modernization, operational excellence, improving quality of service, reducing losses, and becoming more efficient. Finally, approximately 1 billion euros will be invested in client solutions to promote the decarbonization of consumption and promote low-carbon solutions. We will do this, namely through distributed solar and electric mobility. We believe it is key to decarbonize production, but also to engage with our customers and support them on their journeys. Overall, and with a very determined approach, we have been improving our portfolio's alignment with the energy transition, positioning EDP to fully seize the growth that is expected in the sector. EDP continues to have a resilient portfolio, diversified across multiple technologies and geographies. I would like to take this opportunity to mention 3 main strategic commitments detailed in our last presentation in February. First, accelerated and sustainable growth. We are stepping up green growth, deploying 20 gigawatts of renewables in the next 5 years. Second, future-proof organization. We will deliver on this growth by ensuring our organization is increasingly global, agile, and efficient, focused on innovation and digitally enabled. Third, and last but not the least, we will deliver ESG excellence and attractive returns. By this, we mean to continue to consolidate our position as an ESG reference in the sector, with a distinctive position as a green energy major. Elevating ESG excellence as one of our primary commitments was an important step we took to pave the way to a more sustainable future. This is also why our efforts and responsibility towards society have been globally recognized by our stakeholders. We have been awarded leadership positions in multiple ESG rating providers and indices, taking into account multiple methodologies. As an example, EDP has been recognized by the Dow Jones Sustainability Index as one of the most sustainable companies for over a decade. On gender equality, EDP was one of the companies chosen to be part of the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index in the first year it applied. This shows the importance we give to the development of policies of equality, representation, and transparency. The Sustainable Development Goals set out by the UN have also been a strong guidance for our priorities. We have elected 9 out of the 17 SDGs as the ones we contribute to the most, and we have integrated them into our company policies and investments, defining clear specific targets. To mention a few examples, affordable and clean energy. This is SDG number 7. We will have 100% renewable energy by 2030. Climate action, SDG number 13. We will become coal-free by 2025 and carbon neutral by 2030. In terms of industry innovation and infrastructure, SDG number 9, we have committed to invest 3.4 billion over the next 5 years in electricity grids, digitalization, quality, capacity, and resilience. Sustainable cities and communities, SDG number 11. We have targeted 180,000 customers with electric mobility services by 2025. Finally, in terms of SDG number 17, which is on partnerships and goals, we will invest over 20 million euros to provide populations with access to energy by 2025. It is widely recognized that EDP has had a very successful track record in leading the energy transition over the last 2 decades. However, the biggest challenge and the largest opportunity for the sector still lies ahead, and we are in a privileged position to help drive this change. As a company, we are taking concrete steps and initiatives. However, we recognize that we not only have a responsibility to demonstrate real action ourselves, but more importantly, there is an opportunity to set the bar for the industry to meet. This will only work if there is a collective global effort. This is why we have set such ambitious goals, targeting to deploy 20 gigawatts of renewable capacity until 2025, phasing out coal by 2025, and becoming carbon neutral by 2030 with 100% green generation. Now, I want to take this opportunity to thank our teams and all the 12,000 employees who are working tirelessly to realize our bold ambitions. And to tell you in more detail what we're doing in terms of governance, I have the privilege to pass the word to the Chairman of the Supervisory Board, Mr. João Talon. Thank you.
I'm João Talon. I am the chairman of the supervisory board for 6 months now. First of all, let me tell you my opinion. Corporate governance is not an end on itself. Corporate governance is a design, methodology to increase the efficiency of the institutional bodies. EDP has elected since 2006 a two-tier board. It's a very peculiar one because there are two boards, executive management board and then a supervisory board. There are no perfect designs. The perfect design is one that increases the performance and the efficiency. This specific design can be very powerful if there is a very strong arm's length independent relationship between CEO and chairman, which is exactly the case on this moment here at EDP. At the level of the supervisory board, there was a big reduction on the number of members. More than 1/3 are ladies. There is also a big change on the composition of the board. Every single member of the board is a professional, has had his own career, was quite successful in his own career, a lot of experience. We also pay a lot of attention to the ethics, to the internal ambience. We think that this company, no matter where the people are working, here in Spain, in Brazil, in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, whatever, people should be happy, should have the feeling that they are working in a transparent company, an ethical company. Ethical is not a buzzword, it's not a formal issue, it's a substantial issue. The company is defined as a strategic goal to be carbon-free by 2030. And this is the center of all the development strategy of the company. And related to that, the plan has fixed ESG specific goals for environment, for social, and for governance, and the roadmap to obtain them. And for the first time on this mandate, it was included on the remuneration of the executive committee specific targets for each ESG area to be obtained during this calendar. So the variable remuneration of the members of the executive committee is specifically linked also to the level of getting to those targets. I hope I was able to share with you all the enthusiasm that we have in the company at all levels to deliver these very ambitious targets.
Hello everyone, and let me start by reiterating our strong commitment to sustainability, especially to SDG number 7, which ensures access to affordable, reliable and sustainable energy for all. And this is the cornerstone and the foundational principle of our strategy. Looking at the next 5 years, we remain committed to the targets established in our strategic update 21-25, having already secured about 7 gigawatts of capacity until 2025. We will continue to expand our presence mainly in wind, mostly onshore but also offshore, through ocean wind, and solar, mostly centralized, but growing also with high ambitions in distributed generation. Finally, we will continue to leverage on our attractive hydro portfolio and developing optionality and long-term growth through storage and hydrogen. As you know, our investments will not focus solely on renewables. We believe networks play a pivotal role as enablers of the energy transition. Our investments in networks are aligned with the SDG number 9, with the goal of building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation. The backbone of energy transition is really facing a disruption. Firstly, aging infrastructure will have to be upgraded to be able to deal with increased levels of consumption and distributed generation. Secondly, digitalization and automation will also become increasingly relevant to manage complex power flows while improving efficiency. And finally, with electrification of the economy and the growing penetration of intermittent generation, grids have to be more resilient and service levels must respond to these needs. These will require additional investments globally, and EDP will invest 3.4 billion euros in CapEx, including distribution and transmission, and this also will create job opportunities across geographies. On top of investments in renewables and networks, we also believe that customer services need to be leveraged to support the energy transition and pave the path to carbon neutrality, as well as to create sustainable cities and communities in line with SDG 11. We need to work collaboratively with electricity consumers and to achieve decarbonization goals. Aligned with our climate action strategy, we've set medium and long-term targets such as 50% clients with sustainable services by 2030, 100% smart meters installed worldwide also by 2030, 2.2 gigawatts of solar DG capacity on customers by 2025, and 40,000 of electric vehicle charging points installed by 2025. By doing this, we aim to electrify consumption and maximize efficiency to fight climate change, because we know this is the only way to achieve it. Storage technologies will also be key to ensure the stability of the system. With increasing penetration of renewable energy sources, namely solar, daily price patterns will evolve. We expect to see greater price differences during the day, therefore enhancing opportunities for ancillary services and price arbitrage. In Iberia, we have 5.5 gigawatts of hydro, including 2.4 gigas of pumping capacity, which can provide greater flexibility to the system. On storage, we are targeting a sound presence, especially in the US, with 400 megawatts of standalone storage adapted to clients' needs. So storage and flexibility is certainly a key theme to ensure the energy transition, but also hydrogen is expected to become a huge new route to market. To better understand our presence in hydrogen, we are pleased to share this short video.
Achieving carbon neutrality will require renewable hydrogen to decarbonize the hard-to-abate energy uses that cannot be electrified, such as steel, chemicals, cement, and some transport segments. In Europe, according to the European Commission, hydrogen could account for 15 to 20% of final energy demand by 2050. Today, the cost of renewable hydrogen is significantly higher than the fossil fuel-based alternatives, which makes it critical to develop strong policies and instruments to support the initial deployment and build the grounds for further technology development and cost reductions. At EDP, we believe that we are in a position where we can leverage our presence in the entire value chain of the electricity business to play a relevant role in the development of the renewable hydrogen market. We are global leaders in renewables. We have excellent engineering skills and thermal generation assets that can be repurposed for the hydrogen production. We have extensive experience in establishing innovative business models for decarbonization solutions and have a very strong background in innovation and partnerships. To ensure a consistent and integrated approach to tackle this opportunity, we have established a dedicated hydrogen business unit, starting with a clear focus on our core markets, Iberia, the US, and Brazil. We are already developing different types of projects. Large-scale projects in sites of coal power plants in Portugal, Spain, and in Brazil, leveraging on existing infrastructure, good renewable resources, local industries, and relevant ports. Small-scale projects targeted at specific industrial or mobility applications, including small energy hubs, the integration of electrolyzers within existing or new renewable power plants as a means to improve renewable value creation, and finally, R&D projects to assess innovative technologies or applications, including small electrolyzers in 2 of our thermal plants in Portugal and in Brazil. The strategic value The relevance and the competitiveness of our projects is already being proven, as demonstrated by the fact that some of them have already been selected for public funding, from which I would highlight in Sines, the 100 megawatt project to be developed in the location of our decommissioned coal power plant that was one out of 3 projects in Europe selected to be funded by the Green Deal coal. And 3 projects in Spain, 2 of them associated with our coal sites in the Boño and Los Barrios, that have been pre-selected and are now under evaluation by the European Commission to integrate Europe's first wave of hydrogen important projects of common European interest. We are excited with the journey ahead of us and believe we are well positioned to capture this amazing opportunity in an innovative and sustainable technology.
Given our targeted emission trajectory, we intend to close our coal generation business by 2025 to contain the increase in CO2 emissions and to contribute to SDG 13. We have been executing our plan, having anticipated the shutdown of Sines coal plant in Portugal with an equivalent capacity of 1.2 gigawatts. And we must also recognize that over the next decade, that thermal plants will continue to be needed for security of supply and to balance the strong growth of intermittent renewables, which is the case of Pecém plant in Brazil. Therefore, our phase-out strategy passes by partial disposals or partnerships, which we will implement until 2025. However, the road to be carbon neutral by 2030 does not solely rely on coal retirement by 2025. To achieve full decarbonization, we must also phase out our gas generation, having already started this path given the disposal of 0.8 gigawatts of gas capacity in 2020. As we analyze all options for our existing coal power plants, it is very important for us to ensure a just transition. That's why I invite you to watch the following teaser to learn what we've been engaging in these fronts.
Enabling a just transition is a core value of EDP's ESG strategy. We aim to provide social and economic support to affected communities and to be an active shaper of the green future of those regions. EDP's approach is in the full alignment with the EU's position of not leaving anyone behind. As such, EDP is managing the reconversion of 5 coal sites in Iberia that have either shut down or will shut down by 2025. 1 in Portugal and 4 in Spain, of which 2 we received from Viesgo. For each of these sites, transition plans have been developed along 4 priorities: renewable energy, green hydrogen, storage and flexibility, creating an estimated 400 permanent jobs. With these plans, EDP aims to transform Sines into a center of hydrogen tech excellence with 200 megawatts of renewable capacity, 100 megawatts of electrolyzers and an R&D center. A Boño in the hydrogen valley of Asturias with 200 megawatts of renewable capacity and 30 megawatts of electrolyzers. And Soto de Ribeira into a center for the storage of renewable energy and new uses of green hydrogen with 70 megawatts of storage capacity. EDP's action for immediate support of workers and communities is underway. We have taken immediate provisions to mitigate the impact on employment from the shutting down of its coal plants, both through solutions for our own employees with more than 70% retired or moved to new positions within the group, and through social support programs for the local communities supporting direct social resources to vulnerable families, biodiversity, entrepreneurship, education and tourism attraction in Sines, Soto de Ribeira and the Boño. In Sines, for example, we created the Now program, which supports the creation of small businesses and entrepreneurship in partnership with Sines Tecnopolo. So all in all, EDP's approach is fully committed to facilitating employment opportunities in the sectors and those in transition, offering reskilling opportunities, supporting the transition to low-carbon technologies and economic diversification based on climate-resilient investments and jobs, and finally, investing in research and innovation activities.
Our decarbonization efforts have already come a long way, having set ambitious targets to become carbon neutral by 2030. This means that EDP commits to reduce Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 98% per terawatt-hour by 2030 from 2015 base year, and to reduce absolute Scope 3 emissions by 50% over the same time frame. EDP's emissions targets have been recognized by Science Based Targets initiative as appropriate to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. At this point in time, it is very clear that it is not enough to just announce ambitions and objectives. It's time to take action. To conclude on the environmental front, we're not only focused in reducing emissions, but also in protecting our surrounding ecosystems. This is why we have set specific biodiversity commitments, not to build new generation assets in UNESCO World Heritage Natural Sites, and no net loss of biodiversity for all new projects with significant residual impacts until 2030. Because at EDP, we recognize the value of nature and its limits, and in line with the United Nations, we keep our commitment to protect, restore, and promote the sustainable use of ecosystems and biodiversity. Now let's move on to social and our responsibility with our multiple stakeholders. At EDP, diversity, inclusion, and gender equality are fundamental values. EDP has currently about 12,000 employees of 41 nationalities. And on gender equality, we have an action plan, a roadmap to implement initiatives to leverage the gender equality challenges, and we have set public targets: 30% female representation globally and in leadership positions by 2025, and a 35% target for 2030 for both dimensions. EDP also targets inclusion of diverse backgrounds regarding employees with disabilities. And to enable such targets, EDP is involved in several international initiatives aiming at further advance human rights, diversity, inclusion, and gender balance. We are also dedicated to provide a safe workplace for our employees. And to achieve this, a strong safety culture needs to be embedded in the way we work. It needs to be supported by the Executive Board of Directors, transversal to all geographies and business units, and motivational to both employees and contractors. And in the execution front, we have started a new safety program called Play It Safe. We are rolling out this new program to raise awareness of the importance of building and adopting safety habits at EDP. And our main goal is to have zero accidents and no personal harm. Ultimately, we are building a safety culture that promotes everyone's participation. Now regarding suppliers and our value chain. Our partnerships are based on specific criteria aligned with our sustainability strategy, and we aim to have 100% sustainable suppliers by 2025. Circular economy is also a key pillar of our strategy. This is why we are concerned with the afterlife of our assets and waste of our activity. So by 2030, we want to recover more than 80% of our operational waste, reduce total operational waste by 85% and water consumption by 78%, and finally increase recycled waste from operations by 85%. And now, I will pass the word to Vera to discuss the importance of social accountability throughout the energy transition. And thank you very much for your time today.
The planet needs a new energy sector, and as a group, we have committed to go greener, faster, and become carbon neutral by the year 2030. The energy transition is on the move, and as we increase the use of clean, renewable energy in our electricity production, the next big challenge is to electrify the economy and maximize energy efficiency in order to fight back on climate change and give our planet a chance. At EDP, we are focused on empowering consumers with viable solutions that allow them to be a central piece of the path towards a carbon-neutral planet. Mobility alone shows great electrification potential, as the sector still accounts for a quarter of the world's CO2 emissions. However, for mass adoption to take off, we need to ensure that the required infrastructure is in place. That's why we have set the goal of reaching 40,000 public and private charging points by 2025. But at the core of the energy transition sits renewable production that is no longer concentrated in one main producer, but is rather moving downstream and becoming decentralized, bringing power to the people. That is the case for distributed solar generation, whose capacity we expect to grow by 2 gigawatts until 2025. At the same time, we want to ensure that what we are living is a just, fair, and most of all, inclusive transition that leaves no one behind. That is why EDP was the first utility to create what we branded as solar neighborhoods in both Portugal and Spain. And these allow for the massive participation of consumers with low entry costs. But we went one step further, and together with EDP's foundation, we gave life to the inclusive solar communities. Within this scope, we are installing solar panels in institutions of social solidarity throughout Portugal and Spain, so that vulnerable families of the community can benefit from the energy produced and significantly reduce their energy bill. We work hand in hand with local communities, supporting them in the fair energy transition. And to ensure that we maximize our impact, we have also recently created a Social Impact Coordination Office that will oversee our global corporate community impact initiatives. And we aim to invest by 2025 up to 35 million euros every year in programs focused on fair energy transition, culture, social development, education, and others. At EDP, we are fully committed to changing tomorrow now.
Hi everyone, and to finalize this ESG Day, I will be kicking off with one key concern of our ESG investors, which is on the reporting on non-financial metrics and ESG indicators. As regulation evolves, we will continue to be proactive in the adoption and the promotion of the most recognized reporting standards. We have dedicated teams ensuring that we are in the front line adopting these frameworks. EDP has been reporting according to the GRI, SASB, TCFD, just to name a few. We also believe the EU taxonomy will be an enabler of change and encourage a transition towards sustainability, having presented a target of more than 70% of revenues aligned with the EU taxonomy by 2025, based on the eligibility criteria that we know today. We also follow closely the regulatory developments in sustainable finance. As such, the company has provided responses to public consultation processes, involving not only individuals, but also as represented by international organizations. In this context, EDP has taken part of the EU and Global Compact CFO Task Force with the purpose to help companies from any sector and geography to finance their strategies to contribute to the SDGs, and by doing so, help create a diverse and vibrant market for sustainable investments. We also have a long track record in green financing. Since 2018, we have made 8 issues of green bonds of hybrid, totaling 6.4 billion euros, aligned with our sustainability strategy, and by 2025, we want our green financing to represent 50% of total funding. As EDP's strategy has long been focused on sustainability, the issuance of green bonds has promoted a greater alignment of our financial policy with the sustainability strategy, while increasing the market's awareness to this topic. Tapping to this market has been an additional source of funding and an enabler of our strategy, and I believe that we have been extremely successful raising green funds because investors have recognized that our green bonds are perfectly aligned with our overall sustainability strategy. And just before I wrap up, EDP is a socially responsible company, aiming at having a positive impact on the planet and on people's lives. We have established strategic sustainability objectives for the decade that are integrated into the core of our strategy, such as carbon neutral by 2030, coal-free by 2025, and deploying 20 gigas of renewables until 2025, having secured more than a third of this capacity today. This seamless strategic alignment with ESG criteria and the recognition, matched with the strong investor appetite for sustainable instruments, has enabled us to resort to cost-competitive funding such as green bonds, and our equity story is perfectly aligned with the energy transition. We will continue to be a vehicle of change and the true enabler of the energy transition, creating a better future for our customers and the planet in general. We have a distinctive portfolio and superior track record and capabilities that already gives us a unique position as a large green renewables player, and we will double down on this positioning. At EDP, we are passionately committed to this ambition and have the privilege to have at the same time a positive impact in the world. Thank you all for attending this session today, and let's move on to Q&A.